So we're going to pick up where we left off on the Holy Quran, divinely prepared by Noble Drew Ali. This is chapter 36, the holy instructions from the Prophet. Know thyself. Know thyself. The topic at hand. Know thyself. Chapter 36. The weak, weak and ignorant as thou art, O man humble, as thou oughtest to be. O child of the dust, what if thou raise thy thoughts to infinite wisdom? Would thou see omnipotence displayed before thee? Contemplate thy frame. Fearfully and wonderfully art thou made. Contemplate the frame. Fearfully and wonderfully art thou made. Praise therefore thy Creator with awe, and rejoice before him with reverence. Wherefore of all creatures art thou only erect, but that thou shouldst behold his works. Wherefore art thou to behold, but that thou mayest admire them? Wherefore to admire, but that thou mayest adore there in thy Creator? Wherefore is consciousness reposed on thee alone, and whence is it derived to thee? Is it not in flesh to think? It is not in bones to reason. The lion knoweth not that worms shall eat him. The ox perceiveth not that he is fed for slaughter. Something is added to thee, unlike to what thou seest. Something informs the clay. Higher than all is the object of thy senses. Behold, what is it? So what's separating us from the ox or the lion? Right, the ox is getting fed by the farmer or whatever, whoever feeding them for slaughter later in the game, but the ox cannot perceive it that. But a human could. Something is added to thee, unlike to what thou seest. Something informs the clay. Higher than all is the object of thy senses. Behold, what is it? The body remaineth perfect after it is fled. Therefore, it is no part of it. It is immaterial. Therefore, it is eternal. Eternal is like forever. Continuous. It is free to act. Therefore, it is accountable for its actions. Knoweth the ass the use of food, because his teeth mow down the herbage, or standeth the crocodile erect, although his backbone is as straight as a thine. As straight as thine. Allah formed thee as he formed these. After them, all wert thou created. Superiority and command were given thee over all, and of his own breath did he communicate to thee the principle of knowledge. Know thyself in the pride of his creation, the line uniting divinity and matter. Behold, a part of Allah himself within thee. Remember thine own dignity, nor dare descend to evil or to meanness. Who planned terror in the tail of the serpent? Who clove the neck of the horse with the thunder? Even he who hath instructed thee to crush the one under thy feet and to tame the other to thy purpose. Know thyself. Through all the ye's and the these, was anything extracted, anything highlighted for anybody between the ye's and the these? Like I said, when I was reading, 5 and 6 stood out to me.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Wherefore consciousness repose on thee alone, and whence it derives to be, it is not in flesh to think, it is not in bone to be.
I thought you, are you okay? I thought you were reading on the thing. Okay. So the ox perceiveth. Islam, Yamila, Islam. Okay. But so number 5 stood out to me. The ox perceiveth not that he is fed for slaughter. So that's something that separates us from, the beast of the field, or, people that don't have a divine faculty like humans do. That would be picked up on. That's going on. Oh, number 5, it is not in flesh to think. So the flesh don't think. You know what I mean? We're supposed to control the flesh. Who's thinking? You know what I mean? Who's the thinker? The thinker is controlling the flesh. But that's the divine order of things. You know what I mean? Is for the divine you to control the vessel, not the vessel control you. But the vessel can't think. You know what I mean? It's just being commanded. So we have to know thyself. All right. So this is chapter 2, or chapter 3 actually, of Astro Diagnosis, a guide to healing. We actually left off on chapter 1, but I was scanning through it in chapter 3, fire. All right. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Amul Islam. Ali Khan Islam. Who else? Yeah, so chapter 3.
Wow.
Sympathy and anti-sympathy. Sympathy and anti-sympathy. Pythagoras taught that the solar system is one mighty musical instrument that the 12 signs of the zodiac may be compared to the semitones of the chromatic scale, and that the planets constitute the 7 white keys of the cosmic keyboard. Each sign responds to a certain tone. Some tones blend and are harmonious, while others clash. As we find disharmony and conflict between certain notes of a piano and between certain strings of a harp, so do we find similar inharmony between various signs of the zodiac and various planets in their effect on man. Each sign responds to a certain tone. Some tones blend and some are harmonious. Definitely highlights of that paragraph. And he's giving an example as how we find disharmony and conflict between certain notes of a piano and between certain strings of a harp. So do we find similar inharmony between various signs in the zodiac and various planets and their effect on man. So you got different notes and vibrations and instruments, because the instruments are giving off a vibrational tone. And based on what instrument you're using, it's a different tone. And he's using a parallel with the octaves in the zodiac, or planetary angles, which give an effect, which causes a certain, like I say, sextile, 180-degree opposite, whatever the case may be. And based on that angle, you either in harmony, conflict, or disharmony. A couple examples of a trine or trinity. The symbol of the trine is the triangle. In astrology, the trine is considered harmonious and benefic. Then we have the signs which represent the 4 elements, forming the fiery, earthy, airy, and watery triangles. The fiery and airy signs are in harmony with each other, and the earthy and watery triplicities are friendly. So, right, we got harmony and inharmony. The other more examples on that. But the fiery and watery will harmonize. Neither will the earthly and the fiery signs. Planets in these various groups of signs will express the same sympathy or anti-sympathy. The same sympathy or antipathy as the signs themselves. The sign triplicities express themselves through harmony in the temperaments and personalities of people, while the squares express their afflictions through physical discomforts. Disease is really a lack of harmony between the spirit and the personality, a conflict between the lower and the higher man. And keep in mind, the lower and higher man. These are the words of the author, modern European, Rosicrucian member. We went over that last class, and he using the choice of words, lower and higher man. That sounds familiar. The trine or triplicities act as peacemakers, while the squares and oppositions place limitations upon the spirit. The later pair bring the lessons which are to be learned. They exact payment of the debts of destiny from a person for the mistakes made and the selfishness expressed in past lives. The squares and oppositions are most vital in their action. The squares operate through the three groups of signs, which constitute the vicious circle. A couple examples of the head, stomach, kidneys, and knees, and the signs that relate to, right? Heart, throat, ankles, genitals. We got the hips, thighs, intestines, lungs, and feet. Example. Sympathy and antipathy. Doctors have for years been studying the strange sympathy between different parts of the body, which they have found manifested in the diseases of various patients. When they find a disease in one organ, they are in habit of looking for the cause in another organ, which is in sympathy with the first. For instance, in glaucoma or certain kinds of eye trouble, they have invariably found that the real cause or seat of the trouble was in the stomach or in the kidneys. Glaucoma issues in the eye, they're looking at the opposite side of the body to find the cure.
Dr. Sabi also says that when something's wrong with your eyes, it's in your stomach.
Yep, there we have it. In certain types of throat trouble and in goiter, a weakened heart has frequently been found to be the cause. The 4 points of the circle of the cardinal or equinox signs, namely Aries, the eyes, Libra, the kidneys, Cancer, the stomach, and Capricorn, the knees, are closely in sympathy with one another. And trouble in one will frequently manifest in one of the other sides of this circle. For instance, when we find Saturn in the sign of its fall, Cancer, and afflicted, digestive troubles ensue, and invariably the knees will be disturbed. Sometimes stiff knee joints are the result. Eye troubles are frequently developed as a result of wrong eating. People with Saturn and Cancer are extremists in the selection of food. They have strange likes and dislikes. The second vicious cycle is that of the thick signs: Taurus, the throat; Scorpio, the genital organs, rectum, urethra, and nose; Leo, the heart and spine; Aquarius, the legs, below the knees. When the organs of voice or the tonsils are operated upon in childhood, there will be disturbances at puberty and later trouble in childbirth. Great sympathy is found between the sex organs and the organs of speech. The removal of parts of the sex organs causes the change of voice. The male voice becoming feminine and the female voice masculine. The valvular heart trouble often causes the swelling of the ankles. The third group of squares will find composed of the common or mutable signs corresponding to the cadent houses. The sixth house, which is correlated to Virgo, and the 12th house correlated to Pisces, are especially vital in the horoscope, for they are respectively the house of sickness and the house of confinement in hospitals. We find great sympathy between these two signs and houses. Common signs are the most productive of sickness, and more hopeless invalids are found among common sign people than in any other group, for the reason that their willpower is not overly strong. Two common signs are ruled by Mercury, which has dominion over the breath, nerves, and sense perception, and one by Jupiter, which has rule over the fibrin of the blood, the arterial circulation, and liver. Gemini rules the lungs, and through these organs, the blood is oxidized. Virgo has rule over the intestines, sympathetic nervous system, and spleen. However, often we hear the remark, I got cold, or pneumonia due to wet feet, involving Gemini and Pisces. Many more examples could be cited of the action of the vicious circles. Remember the vicious circles. We just looked at those up top. Those clusters of 4 signs. Chapter 4, the science of right living. In the previous chapters, we studied the properties of the signs of the zodiac and had the anatomical groupings so arranged as to make it easy for the student of Astro Diagnosis to study them. It is very necessary that he become familiar with the basic properties of the signs as well as the planets. It is impossible to make any headway in the art of diagnosing a chart unless the student has considerable knowledge of the zodiac and the properties of the signs and planets. He should also familiarize himself with the science of progression. All these different phrases he will have to make use of before he can become proficient in diagnosis, so that he may tell what certain positions, aspects, and planets indicate. It is essential that he understand the temperament and character or character of the patient before he can really be sure of his diagnosis of disease. To find the key to the disease and the reason why a man or woman has become an invalid, whether the disease is organic and whether the patient has broken the laws of nature, is just as necessary as the diagnosis itself. What is the good of knowing what kind of disease is shown in the horoscope if you cannot show the patient where he is breaking the laws of nature? Disease in 95 cases out of every 100 is due to wrong methods of living. And to be able to point these out to the patient leads to the cure. First, you must remove the cause, and then the cure will follow as a natural result. The secret of the success of the progressive doctor lies in the fact that he will never, if he can possibly avoid it, diagnose the disease to his patient directly. He will only give advice and prescribe, and sometimes he may give a hint regarding the cause of the disease. He will also give directions as to food and methods of living and tell why the patient should discontinue certain habits. From this diplomatic handling of the patient comes the doctor's greatest success. He will never express a discouraging word. He never robs the patient of his hope. And when he leaves the home of the patient, he leaves with a smile and an encouraging word. There are exceptions, however, for there are doctors, and they are not in the minority by any means, who are posing under the name physician, but who will predict death or the necessity of operations of various kinds before they have really and truly diagnosed the disease. Under the care of such a physician, the poor patient is frequently doomed, for the one from whom he has expected relief has really robbed him of hope. So we want to impress it very strongly upon our students that never at any time should they predict death. Also, never at any time tell the patient that he has heart trouble, that he is in danger of insanity, or that he is afflicted with the dread disease of tuberculosis. From such statements, he will get the thought of fear. Fear is usually worse in its effect upon the mind of the negative one than the disease itself. So just the doctors are trained to say certain things, especially, well, not especially, for example, rather, they might say you got cancer, and then they're going to treat you with radiation to accelerate your cancer. And you're going to go through like a treatment, So they have their own pace. They'd be like, okay, you're going to get these many radiation treatments. So you predicted to die in 8 months. You got 8 months to live. They saying that because they know how many chemo treatments they're finna give you, on that pace. But if you don't get that, deny that, change your diet, herbs, etc. Mind frame. Because you tell yourself you healthy. You healthy. You tell yourself, I ain't listening to that crap. Changing my lifestyle. It's over. You in recession. "90 patients out of every 100 are ill because of wrong and dangerous methods of eating. Ill because of fear, or ill because of the lack of willpower to resist temptation. In fact, all disease is the result of ignorant violation of the laws of nature. This may not have occurred in this life alone. It may have been brought over from a life previous, and thus the patient has latent weaknesses. So we may realize that to be of real help in the healing of the sick, the healer or the diagnostician must have sufficient knowledge to be able to give the suffering one instruction in right living. Our advice to the reader would be to study carefully and memorize, if possible, the lessons in Astro Diagnosis, which have just preceded, which means chapter 1, chapter 2. Also to familiarize himself with the properties of the various foods and their combinations. For you may expect, if you tell a patient to change his diet, that he will ask you, what should I eat, or what he should eat. One may see from all these considerations how very necessary it is to get a sane and safe knowledge of the science of right eating. Mentality. I want to see how long this is. It looked pretty interesting. Hey, all right. Should we do it? Should we do mentality? How everybody feeling? I just got excited when I seen mentality. How everybody feeling? Everybody tired? Where everybody?
Let's do it. Always a go for me.
All right, let's go ahead, man. We got Chapter 5, mentality. Our first thought when judging the mental qualities of a patient is to find the position of Mercury. You want to find the mental qualities of a patient, and we need to find the position of Mercury. First, note the sign in which it is placed, then the house, and thirdly, the aspects which this planet of reason is making. To save time and space in these lessons, we will not give the effects of Mercury and the different signs of the zodiac, but will refer the reader to the message of the stars, page 201 to 207. Also pages 549 and 550. Reference points. It's a book called The Message of the Stars. And in that book, you will find the basic qualities of Mercury and the 12 signs. These should be studied very carefully, and this study will give a foundation upon which to base the judgment. The next planet to consider is the moon. If there is a good aspect between the moon and Mercury, especially if these two planets are well placed in the angles and in signs in which they can express their best qualities, we may expect the patient will be able to cooperate with the healer. If Mercury, however, is conjunct Saturn, we find a mind which is stubborn, slow, and subject to melancholia. So basically a person that's melancholy, pessimistic, gloomy. When Mercury is trine or sextile Saturn, a well-balanced mind with good reasoning qualities will develop, and a retentive memory is shown. When Mars or Uranus is in conjunction with Mercury, the patient is of high-strung, emotional, erratic type, with little control over the mind. But should Mars or Uranus be sextile or trine to Mercury, it will have a tendency to quicken the mental faculties, giving impulse. If we find Mercury or the moon afflicted by Neptune, the mind is inclined towards unhealthy and unnatural conditions. Obsession, religious mania, mediumship, drinks, or drugs. Observe the house and sign in which these planets are placed to find how they tend to express themselves. Neptune being the higher octave, of Mercury. This planet has a strong influence on the higher mind. Neptune, when afflicted by Uranus or the moon, gives tendencies towards undesirable experiences and psychism. When Neptune is afflicted by Mars, especially when it is in conjunction with this fiery planet, the native is often tempted to use hypnotism or black magic upon the others. I gotta run that back. Neptune is afflicted by Mars, especially when it is in conjunction with the fiery planet. The native is often tempted to use hypnotism or black magic upon the others, and is himself prone to become the victim of those who unscrupulously use these dreadful practices on others. When the mental afflictions are in the 8th or the 12th house, they have a more subtle influence than elsewhere. Afflictions in the 8th house may give the mind suicidal tendencies, but If in the 12th house, being the house of self-undoing, hospitals, prisons, and insane asylums, they may cause confinement in some institution. We wish to impress it very firmly upon the mind of the reader. Never, never at any time base a diagnosis on only one or two aspects, but always upon the entire horoscope. To illustrate the dangers of a superficial judgment, we will take the horoscope of a man who had Mercury in Capricorn in the 6th house, making only one aspect, which was a weak square to Neptune. Judging the horoscope quickly, one would say that he had a dull mentality, but as a boy, he stood at the head of his class. In spelling and mathematics, he was very bright. As a man, he has reached a high status amongst his associates. He is a leader in a line of work which requires executive ability and a keen mentality. To illustrate our point, we will note that the other planets indicated. We will note what the other planets indicated. He had 7 planets in Aries signs, 5 planets in mental signs. The moon and Neptune both well aspected and in angles. The sun and moon are fixed signs and fixed and cardinal signs on the 4 angles. When summing up the entire horoscope, we can well see why this man reached such a high position in mental work with a weak Mercury. So we want to impress it firmly upon our readers to use their reasoning powers before giving a judgment on a horoscope, whether it is for mental, moral, spiritual, or physical qualities. Yeah. So Islam, we just covered a couple chapters. Mentality, sympathy, and antipathy. Anybody want to share any highlights or things that stood out? Islam Phoenix, Islam Humble Bay, Amu.
Islam.
Yeah, anything stood out? Let's talk about what stood out for everybody.
Islam, just overall, what I got from it is just studying the element and different triangles and different wave patterns. It seems like if you don't have at least 2 aspects in union with somebody, it's just not gonna work. It has nothing to do with that person's a bad person. None of that. It's just the energies speak to each other. Nature talks to each other. And, if it doesn't come to a harmony or a union, it's just not meant to be.
Right.
Not sure.
Anybody else?
But yeah, like somebody has Scorpio, Taurus, Gemini. If I don't have at least 2 of those aspects in my triune, it's gonna be kind of hard. Well,
Right. Yeah, naturally. Yeah, this is the guide, and it's fitting that we popped it off with "Know Thyself" in the Quran, and then we transition to this, which is in harmony of knowing thyself. We're getting into the intricacies.
Islam. Also, like since we're dealing with music as well, and they're telling us in the first chapter, I think you were saying about like how each element has a different tone, different sound. So we need to start incorporating that like consciously into what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm glad you brought that up because that was something I was thinking about. It was in the back of my mind, but yeah, it gave an example of comparing different musical instruments that give off different tones when you play them. You know, of course, the saxophone will give off a certain frequency, a bass tone, and the flute gonna give off a different frequency, right? You know, so or pitch, they call it a pitch, you know, and then octaves. You got octaves in music. I remember music, you know, class. They talked about that, like, you know, the octave will enhance the, you know, the frequency.
Yep. The higher the octave, the higher the frequency, vibration.
And you see that zodiac talk. You know, certain planets are octave. You know, but they say
Right.
octave for Mercury was Neptune or Jupiter. You know what I'm saying? So that's an example. You know, and how, you know, all of this is connected. You know, when we talk about, you know, vibratory sounds or things like that, it could become a real therapy type of service we could provide once we master and comprehend like hertz and frequencies, which vibrations and frequencies to be on the hill.
Being here like Tobin Bay.
You know,
Yeah, we're definitely gonna be doing that. That's part of the healing centers. They used to do that and that's what they say that some of the pyramids in Egypt are for. They're basically to tune you. They're healing chambers and astral chambers.
yeah, man. Yeah, you live.
And so something that stood out to me, it said disease in 95% of the cases, and I guess 95 out of the 100 cases is because people are living wrong. And I took that as 95% of people don't even know that they sick because half of the people don't even realize that they're living like their life the wrong way. Because they're programmed to the society to keep doing the same shit. Like,
Yep.
Blind leading the blind.
basically.
And yeah, that's the portion I was thinking about too. That's psychic abilities you pulled off right there. Because
I hopped in late too. I completely forgot it was Wednesday. Like, oh shit.
I was finishing a text too, like a reminder, but I was like,
My email alerts for whatever reason, they don't come through on my phone. I have to literally go open my emails to see my emails pop up. I don't get like notifications. It's weird. They used to come through, then they just recently stopped.
yeah, that's all good. But something that stood out for me as well in that first chapter that you talked about was the doctors and how they're giving rhetoric, and you know what I mean, versus, you know, that's how you can heal yourself.
Yeah, I went through that with doctors trying to force me to take pills for mental health. And I'm like, no, I know that's not the only way. Like, I really got into it. They tried to tell me I was, she didn't want to sign my paperwork for like unemployment and stuff because she told me I was like at the verge of a psychotic break because I did not want to take this medicine she was trying to give me. Like, what kind of bullshit is that? But they just want you to sit there and be quiet and just take the fucking pill and be a robot. Like, nah, I can't live my life like that.
Right. Yeah, you can't do it. Yeah. But yeah, that's cool though. That you,
To add to what she was saying about the body, the organs, and all that, each one has its own vibration. That's how they figure out, like, when you're sick, it's because you're out of tune or you're lower than the vibrational rate of that area in your body. So when they just basically tune it to the room to whatever you need, and then by the time you leave, you basically all your cells have like in that area can transform to that vibration, and then you're back up to it. You know, obviously diet and daily habits, add to it, you know, how long it lasts or not, but that's
Right.
part of it.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was either the introduction or chapter 1. They were saying like, you know, everybody has a biology of a missing link or a link that you know, that's laid dormant within us, but you can kind of disguise it if you eat right and stuff like that. But you know, as soon as you start slipping up, it exposes itself, and you just start immediately having just injuries and like, you know what I mean, just a downfall, like fast. You know, I'm like, damn. But yeah, that's still in play when we're talking about this right here. Yeah, chapter 1, it's all flowing together because I'm seeing how he's laying out his chapters. It's designed where you kind of you should remember the previous chapters, bullet points or whatever as we flow through, because he's gonna keep adding on concepts. But yeah, I like the way it's flowing so far though. So on the medical tip, Dominic Islam.
Peace, brother. Peace.
Islam.
But did anybody else have anything that stood out to them on this Astro diagnosis tip?
Islam. I wanted to add too that on the holistic side, like just from ancestors on the daily, like the Elohim Sunday to Saturday, it was certain notes that they gave us to stay in harmony so we wouldn't get sick. Like for instance, gold was musical note B, silver was G, like Monday, iron was C, mercury was F, tin was B, copper was A, and lead was A for like Friday and Saturday. So they kind of gave us like a you know, like a paper trail, so we could put different aspects in the order, not to mention the colors, different smells. You know, everything goes in alignment. Islam.
Wow.
Yeah.
Islam, that's great information.
And that reminds me of like, you know, things like eucalyptus or bergamot. You know, when you inhale these things, it's health benefit. You know, different, you know, that's what the whole Palo Santo and the sage and all that. You know, even that in itself is purifying.
Mhm.
But yeah. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. I saw something right here, and it triggered when I was reading this portion. What is the good of knowing what kind of disease is shown in the horoscope if you cannot show the patient where he is breaking the laws of nature? That stood out to me when I was reading.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know,
Yeah,
yeah, you sick if you like, you know, you violate the laws of nature. You know, you're sick. And like, you know, it must be pointed out. You know, like that's key.
yeah, like show them their accountability of what they're doing to themselves.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that stood out.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so we're gonna do at this stage of the well, before I transition to talk about I'm gonna get into talk about the clothing and stuff like that. Did anybody have any other thoughts on the Astro Diagnosis?
just that they try to teach that the vibration of the doctor is just or the healer is just as important as what they're giving the person as words, what all of it has to be from a positive place if you want them to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And then once again, like I said, a connection from the Quran, know thyself, to Astro Diagnosis. We essentially cross-referencing. Know thyself, you know. Stop the recording.
Islam, I wanted to know, 'cause I wasn't here when y'all